So I'm actually going to be talking to you about the mindful way through stress. You may have guessed that. And by that I mean using mindfulness approaches to do that. So first question, why lower stress? It may seem like quite an obvious question and we don't like it. It's an uncomfortable feeling. A lot of us feel it at some point. And actually it's not a bad thing in itself. I mean, you could distinguish between pressure and stress. And a bit of pressure is good. It gets us out of bed in the morning. It gives us a bit of drive and energy. But when it gets a little bit too high, that's when it's a problem. And for most of us, it often goes too high. But I was talking about stress and relaxation to my uncle, and he said that, the funny thing, Shamash, is that back in the 60s and 70s, you looked in the magazine articles, and they said that in the future, robots will be vacuum cleaning, you'll have robot secretaries, you have computers doing everything for us, and basically we won't actually know what to do, and we'll be sitting around like this. But what seems to have happened is that as technology gets faster and faster and able to do more things for us, rather than us slowing down and sitting back, we seem to be acting faster and faster, and we end up doing things like that. So it seems to be that as technology works faster, we seem to be working faster too. And I was also thinking about stress and whether stress has actually gone up, because we see a lot of these magazine articles and newspaper articles about stress and how it's going up. But is it actually? And I looked at the research, and Professor Mark Williams of Oxford University, he's found that what was classified as clinical levels of anxiety in the 1950s, clinical levels of anxiety, particularly for young people, is now average levels of anxiety. So it really has gone up. We've got 60 to 90% of doctors' visits stress-related, and as Mark mentioned earlier, in 2020 they're predicting that depression, which obviously comes from stress, will be one of the leading causes of disability in the world. So it's not just an uncomfortable feeling, it's a very serious problem. Now, it's not a problem if you have a little bit of stress now and then. It's really a problem when it becomes chronic. So if you're feeling stress all the time, then it becomes a problem. And a good analogy for this is if you imagine holding a glass of water. Now, it doesn't matter if the glass of water is half empty or half full in this example, and you could try this later on if you want. If you take a glass of water and you hold it in front of you for a minute, you could probably do a minute, couldn't you? If I said, hold a glass of water in front of you for an hour, then your arm is going to ache. It's going to be quite tricky. But if I said to you, you have to hold that glass of water, it's not very heavy, but you have to hold it for the whole day, then you'll probably have to call an ambulance by the end of that day, okay? It's not so much the level of stress sometimes, but it's the fact that it's chronic and it continues. And one of the things about mindfulness is that it can give you a bit of a respite. You can have a little bit of a break. You can put those heavy metaphorical bags that you're holding down for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, or however long it is, just to have a little bit of a break and to put that stress down before you continue with your everyday activities. So, first question there, what is mindfulness? And I thought this would be quite a simple question to answer when I was first writing my book. So I looked in all the various books and articles, and actually everyone has a slightly different definition for what it is. So I thought, let's have a little go at a little practice. I don't know if you've done a little practice earlier, but we'll just have a go at a 1-minute mindfulness practice. So this is a picture I took a couple of weeks ago, actually, in Thailand. So you can look at that picture, or you can close your eyes if you wish, and I'll just guide you in it for a minute. And if you don't want to practice mindfulness, you can just sit there and think about something else. But yeah, just begin by finding a posture that you feel comfortable with. It could be the same posture you're in now, or it could be different, however you prefer. And allow your eyes to close if that feels okay for you. And simply begin by taking one full deep breath in, feeling the breath as it goes down into your lungs and down into your belly, and just allow that breath to slowly release and just feel that sensation. And then you can just let your breath be normal and natural, and just become aware of the sensations of your body on the chair, the sensations of your back against the back of the chair, the touch of your feet on the floor, and noticing the parts of your body that may be tense and others that may be relaxed, and just allowing the space for them to be there. If it's tense or relaxed, either way, it doesn't matter, it's okay. just feeling the sensations of your body for a few moments. And if thoughts arise, that's fine. If you're feeling some other emotion, that's okay. And perhaps having a slight smile on your face, if you wish, as you draw another deep breath in, down into your belly, and then slowly breathing out. And now, if you wish, you can gently open your eyes, or you can just carry on meditating while I speak. I'll ask a question. In that 1 short minute practice, do you feel a little bit more calmer or more relaxed or more in the moment? Could you put your hand up, please? Okay, great. And if you're so relaxed that you can't actually be bothered to put your hand up, can you put your hand up, please? yeah, got a few more there, yeah. So that's amazing, right? A 1 minute practice, and quite a lot of you put your hand up for that, almost 80 or 90%. So that's the power of doing a short mindfulness exercise. It doesn't have to be these long 30 or 40-minute exercises. So what does mindfulness mean? Mindfulness, essentially, if I was going to say one word for what it means, it's about awareness or attention. And if you could bottle it, you would be a multi-zillionaire, because of the benefits of it are huge and the drawbacks of it are very limited. So mindfulness is about awareness. In fact, the word meditation, and obviously there are mindfulness meditations, the word meditation and medication have similar root meanings to do with curing and healing. So that's not by accident. So here's one kind of invitation for a particular definition for what mindfulness is. First of all, it's about intentionally paying attention. So it's about making a choice to actually pay attention. It's not necessarily an automatic process, but something you consciously decide to do. And you can think more about what that word intention means. It could mean bigger than just making a choice, but I won't go into that now. But it's about intentionally paying attention, so focusing your awareness on a particular thing, or opening your awareness more often. Bringing your mind into the present moment. Yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is the present. That's why it's a gift, something like that. So it's about being in the present moment. It's about being in the here and now. And the benefits of doing that is that it allows us to let go of our worries and concerns about the future and all that rumination or thoughts about the past, and coming into the here and now. Apparently, researchers found that we only spend 50% of our time in the present moment. So if you want to double your life, just live in the present moment. Cool, hey? It's about bringing a non-judgmental awareness. There's nothing wrong with making judgments every now and then, and people say that, how can I be mindful in the workplace? I need to decide, who to hire or who to fire. We need to make decisions, and that's okay. But in the mindful practice itself, we're saying give your mind a break from the judgment, or even if you notice the judgment arising, taking a step back from that too. And also there's the quality of being open-hearted in the mindful practice. So the word for mind and heart in Eastern languages is actually often used interchangeably. And if you look at the Chinese character for mindfulness, it's got an image of a heart within it too. So although we call it mindfulness, it can actually be called heartfulness too. Interestingly, I told one of my friends that I was a mindfulness teacher, and I teach mindfulness. Would he be interested? He said, Shamash, I don't think so. My mind is full enough already. But obviously, it's not about filling your mind or about emptying your mind, actually, but more about having a presence. So you guys, you probably come quite often to mind and its potential. You may have done a bit of mindfulness, so you probably think, yeah, I'm really in the moment. I probably don't even need to listen to this talk. So we're going to have a little test, okay? So get ready to try and work this out. You need to act as Sherlock Holmes and work out who killed Lord Smythe. Are you ready? Mindfulness.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
But how did you know?
Madam, as any horticulturist will tell you, one does not plant petunias until May is out. Take her away.
Sorry, madam.
It's just a matter of observation. The real question is, how observant were you?
Action.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
It's easy to miss something when you're not looking out for it. And that's an example of a state of mind that we go into. Our minds can really easily filter out a lot of information and just focus on one thing. And there's lots of other little video clips you can find on YouTube of things like that, where you're focusing on one thing so much that you can miss lots and lots of changes. Now, that was amazing. I mean, also, did you see the number of different things that got replaced? And yet, how many people noticed one change? How many people noticed two changes? Okay, so a few of you, yes, a few, yeah. But only a few noticed two, and there were 21 changes, so that's incredible. Now, what we're saying with mindfulness is that if you go around your everyday life very much focused, goal-oriented, in this doing state of mind, you can actually miss out on a lot. And if you get into that too much, you can miss out on things completely. Mindfulness is about noticing this doing or goal-orientated state of mind, but also learning to switch into this more being state of mind, stepping back and looking at things and being more aware and mindful of what's going on. By doing that, you notice more and actually have more choice. Yeah? If you've got negative thoughts arising in your mind, but you're not mindful, they could be just underneath the level of consciousness and having an effect on your emotions and what you're doing, but you're just not aware or awake to them. So by practicing mindful exercises, you can notice them more, and then learn to take a step back from them rather than taking them to be reality. So mindfulness is actually just about giving you more choice and more flexibility in your awareness. So I'm just going to touch on a little bit of research. So the guy on the left, many of you may know him, Dr. John Kabat-Zinn. He secularized mindfulness back in 1979 with some colleagues at UMass Medical School. And they've been researching it ever since. And as several of the speakers have mentioned today, there's quite a good evidence base for mindfulness. The guys on the right, you know the Dalai Lama, and he's with Professor Richard Davidson. And I just thought I'd highlight one of his bits of research, because there's so many different bits I can show, but this is a bit of a classic one. And in this one, what Richard Davidson did is he looked at the front part of the brain. And he found that for people who are more likely to be suffering from anxiety and depression, the right prefrontal cortex was more activated. For people who dealt with emotions more effectively, had a greater level of acceptance rather than avoidance, their left prefrontal cortex, this part of the brain, was more activated. So what they did is they went into a biotech company and they did an 8-week mindfulness course on them, and they scanned their brains before and after. And they found that after just an 8-week course in mindfulness, there was a shift in activation from the right to the front, right to the left of the prefrontal cortex. The activity of the brain changed, and we've heard a lot about neuroplasticity in the last couple of days. So there's an example of that. What they interestingly found too was that with monks that practiced for a long time, the shift was even greater. And for one particular monk who many may have heard of, Mathieu Ricard, who's a French translator of the Dalai Lama, his was completely off the scale. And when the BBC found out about this, they started emailing him and calling, yeah, he's on email and computers. And so they tried contacting him, but he was up in Tibet meditating somewhere probably. And he turned his computer and he had hundreds of emails saying, "You're the happiest man on the planet, we need to interview you." Because the activation was so far on the left side, they'd never actually seen that. But that's associated with a state of more being mode of mind, more approaching difficulties rather than avoiding. So how does mindfulness reduce stress? There's three main ways that I've identified, but there's many. One of the interesting ones is acceptance. Now, acceptance is such a key part of mindfulness that they sometimes call it mindfulness-based approaches for therapies and sometimes acceptance-based approaches. And by acceptance, I don't mean resignation. I mean, in your present moment experience right now, if you can accept it rather than avoid it, you get into a more helpful frame of mind. For example, right now, you may be feeling a bit too hot, or you may be feeling really irritated by the tone of my voice, or something may be annoying you. But in this very present moment, if you can't change it, the only other choice you have is to accept it. And if you accept it, then you stop fighting with your present moment experience. And once you stop fighting with that, it reduces the stress and the anxiety around it and allows it space to arise and pass away. The more you fight with your present moment experience when you can't change it, the stronger it seems to get. So that's one skill that you teaches. We've already talked about how it helps you to be in the present moment and the benefits of that. It reduces things like rumination and thoughts, worrying thoughts. The other interesting one, which we don't hear about very often, is this ability to step back into our observer self. So we've got a bodily self, we know about that. We've got a mind self, we've got our thoughts and emotions. We're very much aware of that. But the very fact that we can be aware of our thoughts, we can be aware of our emotions, that implies that there is a place within us, there is an observer, there is a witness. And by learning to step back into that, you create a bit more space within your awareness, within your bigger mind in a sense, to have these emotions that can arise and pass away, but they're not so big. So rather than being close up and feeling your strong so-called negative emotions and being kind of lost in them, you're able to take a bit of a step back and watch them from a distance perspective, and there's benefits of that. So those are three examples of how it helps to reduce stress. So how can you be more mindful? Well, there's two main ways of developing mindfulness. One of them is called formal mindfulness, and the other one's informal. Now, by formal, it doesn't mean that you need to kind of get dressed up like me every time you do a meditation. It just means that you're taking time out to do the mindfulness practice. So the three key ones that have kind of been researched, but there's many of them, is the expanding awareness meditation or sitting meditation. So that involves, first of all, becoming aware of your breathing. Then you expand it to your body, sounds, thoughts and emotions, and eventually this, what we call choiceless or open awareness. The second main formal practice you can do is a body scan meditation. There's many CDs that you can get. They're usually about half an hour long, but they vary in time actually. Often involve lying down on the floor or on a mat or on a bed, and you practice moving your attention right from the tips of your toes up your body, so you become more aware of your bodily sensations. And finally, what many of you may do already, mindful movement practices, which can include Tai Chi, yoga, Qigong, or even some martial arts. So that's one group of practices where you take time. But the other interesting one is the informal mindfulness. And that's any task you do, absolutely any task that you do, and you give your attention to it. So you become more aware and awake to what's going on. This can lead to a greater sense of pleasure. For example, if I went outside today and I was just worrying about my presentation, which I partly was actually, but if I was just worrying about that and not noticing the sunshine and the warmth and the beautiful water and the fact that it's not really cold like it is in London, then I'd be missing out on that pleasure, and my thoughts would be more overwhelmed about something that's going to happen in the future. So that's the benefits of informal mindfulness. And an example is simply washing dishes. And this gentleman is giving a good example of being unmindful because he's not looking in the right direction. But even something, I know one of my friends just enjoys pairing socks. She actually sits down, unpairs them, and then just sits down and spends 10 minutes pairing the socks up and just does that as a mindful practice. So there's a little tip, give yourself a bit of extra work. So just to quickly finish off, 5 quick tips for being a bit more mindful. We've already heard about this, avoiding multitasking, doing one thing at a time. Multitasking isn't cool anymore. Just do one thing at a time, do it mindfully, giving it your full attention. Stop between activities to take a breath. In our everyday lives, we've got lots of activities we do, but there's actually a little moment where we can stop and breathe between one activity and the next. So if you can identify that between the end of this talk and you going to the next break or whatever, you just take 1 or 2 breaths before you do that. When you get in the car, before you drive off, just take a couple of breaths. That could be helpful. Using the sound of your email or text or your phone ringing in the workplace as mindfulness bells. So when you hear beep, 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 you think, a mindfulness bell, instead of, oh no, another text message. So things like that. One thing is just ask yourself, apparently if you're very anxious, if you just ask yourself, where are my feet? It's quite helpful because you start thinking, hang on, that's a simple question, I know that. And now it seems quite silly, but at the time when you're feeling very anxious, apparently if you ask yourself, where are my feet? And you move your attention down into your feet rather than up into your head, that can be quite helpful. So try it out. Try it out and see how you find it. And finally, a bit of daily quiet time, a little bit of mindfulness and meditation, even just drinking your tea every morning or coffee or whatever you drink in a mindful way. But yeah, that's it from me. Thank you very much. I hope you found it helpful.